Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really powerful idea from Mark Graban's book, The Mistakes That Make Us. What if every single error you made wasn't actually a failure, but a strategic asset? We're going to break down how you can harness your mistakes for some pretty incredible growth and innovation.
So let's just jump right in with a question you probably don't hear at work very often. What's your favorite mistake? Yeah, it sounds like a trick question, doesn't it? But what if I told you that the most successful people out there don't just put up with mistakes, they actually seek them out. They cherish them.
And why would they do that? Well, it's because mistakes are the raw material for learning. They aren't something to fear or try to hide, they're just an expected part of the whole process. In fact, some of the most successful entrepreneurs, yeah, even the original sharks from TV, built their entire fortunes on the back of some absolutely massive errors. Okay, so take Kevin Harrington, one of the original investors on Shark Tank. His infomercial business was an absolute machine, pulling in $100 million a year. But then, one Monday morning, his CFO runs into his office totally panicked. The bank was withholding their weekly $2 million deposit. Just like that, they couldn't make payroll, they couldn't buy TV airtime. The entire company was about to completely implode. So what happened? Well, it turns out one of his 12 products had a high defect rate, and it triggered a bunch of customer complaints. And since all of his revenue flowed through a single bank account, a problem with just 3% of his sales managed to freeze 100% of his cash. And this is where we get the real lesson. The faulty product, that wasn't the real mistake. The real mistake was the incredibly fragile system he had built. So he did survive the crisis, but more importantly, he learned a huge lesson. He immediately went out and created separate corporate entities and bank accounts for every single one of his products. This completely isolated the risk, making his entire operation way more resilient. And today, he calls this his favorite mistake, because the pain of that crisis forced him to build a much, much stronger business. Harrington's story is the perfect example of this fundamental choice that every single organization has to make when things go wrong. Because the way you respond to a mistake doesn't just solve one problem, it ends up defining your entire culture. The legendary management thinker W. Edwards Deming really hit the nail on the head. See, the goal isn't to eliminate mistakes. Let's be real, that's impossible. The goal is to drive out the fear of making mistakes. Because fear is what paralyzes teams and just stops learning dead in its tracks. And this leads you to two very different kinds of workplaces. On one side, you have a culture of fear. This is where people hide their mistakes to avoid getting blamed. The person gets punished, but the system never gets fixed. So the same errors just keep happening over and over. Innovation dies. But on the other hand, you have a culture of learning. Here, mistakes are brought out into the open. The focus shifts from who did it to how did it happen. You blame the process, you fix the system, and that is what fuels real, lasting growth. So how do you get there? How do you actually build that culture of learning? Well, it doesn't start with some memo from the top. It starts with you. It starts with how you personally handle your own mistakes. Yeah, before you can change a team's culture, you have to kind of get a handle on your own inner monologue. So first, just say it out loud. I made a mistake. Then normalize it. Just remember that everybody, even the smartest people you know, makes mistakes all the time. Be kind to yourself. Calling yourself stupid doesn't help anyone. And then, here's the most critical part. Immediately shift from blame to curiosity. Just ask, okay, what can I learn from this? And when you feel ready, talking about it helps even more. The author Daniel H. Pink says that sharing our stumbles actually lifts the burden. It just makes the mistake feel less scary. And you might worry that people will think less of you. But the research shows the complete opposite. They actually admire your courage, and it makes them feel safer to share their own mistakes too. Now, once you get comfortable with your own imperfections, if you're a leader, your job is to then extend that feeling of safety to everyone around you. The official term for this is psychological safety, and it was defined brilliantly by Harvard's Amy Edmondson. Now, this isn't about just being nice. It's this deeply held belief that you can be vulnerable, that you can actually admit a mistake without the fear of being punished or humiliated for it. So how do you create that? Well, let's look at this fantastic real-world example from Garrison Brothers, a Texas whiskey distillery. Their master distiller, a guy named Donis Todd, made a very, very expensive mistake. See, he let about 100 barrels of bourbon aged for way too long in that brutal Texas heat. And the result? Massive evaporation and a potential loss of up to $300,000. He walked into the founder's office completely expecting to get fired on the spot. But the founder, Dan Garrison, didn't punish him. He didn't even raise his voice. Instead, he said this. I mean, with that one sentence, he sent a signal to his entire company that learning is more valuable than money. He chose to invest in the lesson, not punish the person. That is how you build psychological safety.
Okay, so creating safety helps us learn from mistakes after they've already happened. But the ultimate goal, right, is to build systems that help prevent them from happening in the first place. This is really about moving from being reactive to being proactive.
And to do that, we first have to understand that not all mistakes are created equal. You've got planning mistakes. That's when your plan was just flawed from the get-go, usually because of a bad assumption. Then you have execution mistakes, which are often called slips. This is when you knew exactly what to do, but your action just didn't match your intention. Think about accidentally clicking End Meeting for All on Zoom. We've all been there, right? Now here's the key takeaway. We can't always prevent planning mistakes. I mean, innovation requires testing new ideas that might be wrong, but we can and we absolutely should design our processes to make those little execution mistakes, those slips, really difficult or even impossible to make. This is a concept from Toyota called poka-yoke, which basically just means mistake-proofing. And you actually see mistake-proofing everywhere in your daily life. Why are the holes on a salt shaker different from a sugar dispenser? To prevent a slip. Why won't your coffee maker start brewing until the mug is in place? That's a little sensor designed to prevent a huge mess. These are all just simple systems designed to make it really easy to do the right thing and really hard to do the wrong thing. And this brings us right back to the big idea. As Dr. Donald Berwick, a real pioneer in patient safety, says, every defect is a treasure. A mistake isn't a failure you should be ashamed of. It's a gift. It's like a big, flashing arrow pointing directly to a weakness in your system that you now have a chance to go and fix. So the next time you make a mistake or you see someone on your team make one, try to see it differently. It's not a moral failing. It's not a sign of incompetence. It's evidence. It's proof that you're in the game, that you're pushing boundaries, and that you're actually trying to make things better. And that's our explainer for today. The crucial point is to completely reframe how you see errors. Seeing them not as failures to be feared, but as data to be mined for insight, well, that's a genuine superpower. So the final question isn't if you'll make a mistake, but what treasure are you going to find when you do?